Hello, Emily here from Homemade Emily Jane, and I am so excited to share with you about the Stratus Quilt Pattern. Stratus is an easy, beginner-friendly improv quilt that is block-based and comes in 4 sizes. The Stratus Quilt Pattern includes mini, baby, throw, and queen sizes, and is perfect for you to use up scraps if you choose to. The pattern includes both an ombre version like this one, or a scattered scrappy version as well. So you can use pre-cuts that are 2.5-inch strips, or maybe you can use fat quarters or 1/3 yards. So lots of possibilities with this awesome quilt pattern. So if you've never done improv quilting before, this is a really great quilt pattern for you to get started with it. It's super easy and not as scary as you think it is once you get started. The main component of the Stratus quilt pattern are these square blocks that are composed of wonky strips. The Stratus quilt pattern is perfect for a confident beginner quilter. So if you've made a quilt before, or if you are confident in your 1/4-inch seam allowance, then this pattern is perfect for you. It has a fun way of combining wonky improv strips with nice precise sashing. So it's a good way to build both of those skills. If you've never tried improv quilting before, maybe this would be a great opportunity for you to join the Sew Along. Following along with the Sew Along will help you learn tips and tricks and be able to make it with confidence. My Sew Along will launch on October 4th, which is right around the corner. So if you want to join the Sew Along, make sure you sign up in the description below, and that'll get your name on an email list for me so that I can contact you about the Sew Along and about other Homemade Emily Jane things in the future. I'm super excited for this Sew Along because we are going to take 4 weeks to make our very own Stratus quilts. I'm personally going to make an ombre version so I can show you how I do the ombre, but you can use whatever fabrics you want, maybe even fabrics in your stash. The Sew Along will also have lots of really great prizes that will be offered for people that share their progress on Instagram. So far, I've already started lining up the sponsors, and I'm really excited. There's going to be lots of opportunities to win fabric and even batting too. So you definitely don't want to miss the Stratus Quilt Sew Along starting on October 4th. Let's talk a little bit about the fabric requirements needed for the Stratus Quilt Pattern. If you wanted to make the scrappy scattered version of the Stratus Quilt Pattern, you can definitely use scraps from your fabric stash. You can also use a roll of 2.5-inch wide fabric, or fat quarters, or 1/3 yard cuts of yardage. So there are lots of options for picking out the fabrics for your Stratus quilt. I would like to recommend some of my favorite tools that I used while making my Stratus quilt pattern in case you want to get some for your Quilting Notions collection as well. Of course, you'll definitely need all of the basic quilting tools for making a quilt, such as your sewing machine and thread, a rotary cutter, etc. But there are some other tools that might make it just a little bit easier. First off, I want to share with you about the Stribology XL ruler. This is one of my favorite rulers for when I plan on using my rotary cutter, and is really helpful for cutting out the sashing on this quilt, especially if you're making one of the larger quilt sizes, because we cut out a lot of strips of fabric. Another neat tool that you might want to use if you wanted to make this quilt would be an AccuQuilt. You wouldn't typically use an AccuQuilt for doing an improv quilt. However, I found it particularly useful to use a 5-inch square when trimming my blocks. So if you have an AccuQuilt and happen to have the 5-inch square die, I would definitely recommend using it. In addition to all of the basic sewing supplies that you need to make a quilt, I always recommend using Best Press to prep your fabrics before you start cutting. Best Press is particularly helpful on this quilt because the seams that you're sewing to make your wonky strips are kind of on the bias, and bias fabric tends to stretch a bit more. So using Best Press can eliminate that stretch. I personally made a few different versions of the Stratus quilt as samples, and I would love to share them with you now. First off, I made the Ombre Blue quilt, which I've been posting a lot about. You'll see that I use a wide variety of solid blue fabrics in this quilt, ranging from dark to light. These are all PBS solids, and I actually started offering fabric bundles and quilt kits. So if you want to make a Stratus quilt just like mine, there are some listed in my shop, which I will link in the description below. These bundles and quilt kits are only going to be available for a limited time. I don't have space in my home to store a lot of fabric, so I don't plan on keeping these on inventory. If you want to get one now, definitely make sure you get one. Once they're gone, they're gone. The quilt kits for the blue Ombre Stratus quilt will include all of the fabrics that you need to make the quilt top, the binding, as well as a paper version of the Stratus pattern. For my blue Ombre Stratus quilt, I decided to have my mom long arm quilt it with this really fun curvy design. And I felt like the curves on the quilting design really helped complement the wonky strips on the piecing design. What do you think? In addition to my throw size blue Ombre Stratus quilt, I also made 2 baby size quilts, and I cannot wait to show them to you. The first one is this really fun neutrals colored quilt that uses a really fun chambray fabric in there, and then some gingham, some solids, really just some fun fat quarters that I had around. And I feel like they really come together for a fun gender neutral nursery. So you see the backing of my quilt has all these really cute animals. This was a custom order from Joann Fabrics that I'm really happy with. So I'm excited about this baby quilt. The other baby quilt sample that I made is this green one featuring all Riley Blake basics. You'll see here I've got some solids, some hashtag, as well as a few other different Riley Blake basics, all in these fun teal, aqua, green colors. And I backed this quilt in Shannon Fabrics Minky Dot in Mallard. So I thought that this really rich backing really complemented the fun greens on the front. Now that I've shown you my 3 sample quilts that I made, I would love to share with you some that my pattern testers have made. Making any quilt pattern definitely takes quite a few people to make sure that it is ready to go. And I could not make patterns without the help of some really wonderful testers. Let's check out the quilts that they made for the Stratus Quilt Pattern. This first one is a baby size made by Stephanie from October in the Wild. Stephanie used some really fun burnt orange fabrics as well as a fun neutral print. And I really love how she used a basic blender for the sashing instead of just solid white. I think it really brings out some fun in this quilt. The next tester sample is a throw size made by Laura from Sharing Seams. Laura's quilt features an aqua and green ombre color scheme, all made from fat quarters from a Michael Miller Fabrics collection. Another really awesome sample quilt was made by Ashley from Whaling City Quilt Co. This was a really fun jungle tropical baby quilt, and I really loved the fun use of prints, solids, and blenders all in one quilt. Thank you so much for joining me as I shared with you about the Stratus Quilt Pattern. Be sure to check out the description below if you want to visit my shop and grab the pattern for yourself. I sell it as both a PDF digital download that you can get right now or a paper pattern that I will mail to you. So either way, it's the same pattern, just 2 different formats. If you want to make your own Stratus pattern, be sure to comment below and let me know what color scheme you plan on using. Happy sewing!